Synesthesia is a neurological condition in which information meant to stimulate one sense stimulates other senses. What do I mean by this? Well, people who have synesthesia are called synesthetes, and some of these individuals are able to see colors when they hear sound or music. That's pretty rad if you ask me. Let's apply this principle to our very own synthwave track here. What we're going to do here is emulate the idea of putting colors to our song. Now, because you and I are synthwave producers, we are going to do that using a variety of techniques. One technique I'd like to show you here today is by introducing background ambient sound or ambient noise. So let's play our track here and let's break this down even further. Okay, pretty simple stuff here. Now, the idea of adding color to our soundtrack has very little to do with coloring our MIDI clips in these cool, funky colors. I'm talking more about adding ambient noise to our soundtrack. So this is what I have going on in the background. All right, let me crank up the volume here so you can clearly hear what's going on. So here we have a combination of some vinyl pops, some crackles, some dirt, oscillating between the left and the right channel. In fact, I have 3 channels here pumping out this sort of stuff as our track is playing. Now let me play this in context one more time. Now, this is a really cool way of introducing some of that lo-fi quality to some of those recordings back in the 80s. And I'm specifically talking about some of the retro new wave music that was pumped out. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the stuff was high quality and high fidelity, as the term was used back in the 80s. So I urge you to try to incorporate some of these lo-fi elements to your production. It will give it a different flair, a different attitude, a different color. And it also harkens back to the 1980s when things weren't quite as hi-fi as they are today. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the soundtracks that came out in the 80s were absolutely brilliant and pristine. However, some of the tracks had this grittiness to it, partly because they were recorded on tape. And it's funny to see that the emergence of these tape emulators are being used in productions nowadays. So this is a great way of using some of that background grit or background static noise to our synthwave production here. Another thing you may want to consider, just to add your own signature to your synthwave tracks here, is to head on outside and capture some field recordings that you can reintroduce into your production. Use these tracks to sort of fill in the mix. When your tracks are feeling kind of light and you want to add a little bit of grit, a little bit of dirt, you can always pop those in, and that should do the trick. Now remember, you don't always have to have these ambient sounds trailing throughout the entire length of your soundtrack. You can always high pass them or low pass them at key events, or just mute them at certain points during your song. Now, another thing you may want to consider is using these tracks at the very beginning of your piece. In other words, you may start off with a series of chords or some, let's say some pads, and that's where you would like to introduce some of those background sounds. And as your song develops, you perhaps want to lower the volume. So you're going to ride that fader, lower the volume to give the other instruments the opportunity of shining, right? And then you can always bring them back at the very end of your track. All right, so if you'd like to learn a lot more about synthwave music production, I do offer masterclasses, and I wanted to personally thank those of you who have supported me here on the YouTube channel, as well as the SynthwavePro.com website. Thank you all for enrolling in the course, and I do appreciate your feedback. This is where you and I will build a track from start to finish. We cover things like workflow, sound design, arrangement techniques, mixing, and mastering, okay? So if you're interested in that, the links are in the description. If you don't want to miss out on any more synthwave tutorials, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification button. In the meantime, guys, keep producing, stay safe, and I love you all. I'll see you next time.